With a title like mine, I think we need to start with some definitions. First of all, well, I'm not going to define Alma. Hopefully, I don't need to. Uh, the only feature of Alma that is going to be pertinent here is the ability to upload counter reports to vendor records and to display that data in Alma Analytics. But counter also probably doesn't need a lot of explanation to this group. The Counter Code of Practice defines standards for vendors to report usage metrics. Counter is organized as a community-led organization, and it's just one of the triumphs of librarian organizing, and that the vast majority of our resource providers have agreed to comply with these standards, which means that we get data in a standardized way, which allows us to meaningfully compare usage of different platforms to each other. So real data. So by that, I'm talking about non-counter reports. Let's say counter reports are real, but there's other real data, reports where you have some confidence that you know what it means. Now, if we look at the table on the right from Swank Digital Campus, I know what that means. These are plays of videos in a particular month by title. Okay, I get that. The one on the left from the unfortunately named International Clinical Educators Group, or ICE, I really have trouble understanding what this data represents. This is, I mean, it's real in some sense, but for my purposes, I'm not going to consider it real. Deadbeat vendors. Now, that might be a little bit harsh because the vendor might supply good content reliably. But what I have in mind here are vendors who market to the academic sector while ignoring the things that academic institutions expect from their vendors, such as counter reports. I won't name names, but you know who I mean. Overdrive, Canopy, Swank. I think O'Reilly, we don't get O'Reilly, but I've heard about that as well. So why would we do this? Why would we fake a counter report? So counter reports in analytics are really nice, but if you're missing platforms, it's a problem. So as an example, I've got a widget in Alma that shows the most viewed streaming video titles across our district. Here's what it would look like showing only those vendors that supply their own counter reports. We can see it's all Films on Demand, which supplies counter reports, which we retrieve via automated sushi harvesting. Yay, Infobase, they give us what we expect. But this is missing two major platforms, Canopy and Swank. If we add those platforms, we see very different results. The top viewed videos for this year are actually from Canopy and Swank. Swank's platform there is called Digital Campus. So if we don't have this data in Alma, then we can't use analytics to get meaningful data about our streaming video usage across platforms. We could get it some other way, but we couldn't use analytics, which is what we would like to be able to use. So how do we do this non-counter usage? How do we get this non-counter usage data into Alma? So first, we need to set some boundaries. One of the great things in Alma is that it can harvest counter reports automatically on a schedule using the sushi protocol for those vendors who support that. What I'm talking about is going to be manual work, piece by piece. When I say feeding Alma, we often think of a feed as automated, but this is more like spoon feeding. If you've done that, it can be wonderful, but also a little tedious. With sushi harvesting, I would just grab every report that the vendor provides and put it into Alma, have it stored in Alma, and maybe I'll find them useful, even if I'm only really looking at a few. But in general, with this process, with this faux counter process, I would really only consider doing TRJ1, TRB1, and IRM1, right? So for journals, ebooks, and videos. And then what I'm going to be looking for is an Excel or CSV file that I can upload to Alma. So now we're going to create a faux counter IRM1 report using Canopy data. Okay. So the first thing is, what are we looking for? I'm going to need to look at a raw counter report to know what I need to get from Canopy. In my institution, we have two main vendors I know I can get this from. I can get such a model from. Films on Demand and DocuSeek. Both of these vendors are set up in Alma, and we retrieve files from them regularly via Sushi. However, I can't just go into Alma and download the files that it has retrieved via Sushi, because when that happens, those are JSON files, not Excel files. I want Excel files so I can copy and paste columns of data. So I can get those from the vendor admin site. So you can see this is the Films on Demand admin. I go to Reports. I then look in the kind of surprising array of reports that they supply and find counter. Okay, and then I would adjust the date range. Here I'm grabbing 2 months just to see what that looks like. Get the IRM1 and click the download button. And you can see this web display, right? It looks like the kind of data that we're looking for. Okay, so, so then I'll download it. And looking at this file, we can look at the structure of it, right? It's got a report header. I can tell you that almost none of that data in that header is going to be used by Alma, but in order for the file to be accepted as valid by Alma, the header must be there, and you know, all those lines must be in a particular, those rows must be in a particular format. So when I do this header, I use values that make sense for us. In institution ID, I put in my our Canopy ID. It doesn't really matter. Alma's not going to use it. And then when I was looking at the standard again, it looks like actually it's supposed to be preceded by something like a platform, but it really doesn't matter that much. You know, the sort of the report ID is important. Maybe the reporting period is important. I'm not sure, but I just put that stuff in. Okay, so so then let's look at the report itself, right? The body of it. We're going to need the title of each video along with the views for each month. So then we can also include a publisher and a proprietary ID. Okay, that all looks interesting. Can we get this from Canopy? So Canopy puts its reporting in an area of their admin site called Analytics. There is a subpage called Videos that allows you to set a date range and retrieve title level data for that month. So this looks like the data that we get in an IRM1 report. Note on the top there, you see a graph, but then underneath is a table and with a handy export to Excel button. Okay, so if you go there, you might see that the dates are set to the last 30 days. So you want to select the entire month. But now look at this. What you do is you select the month. There doesn't seem to be any way to get multiple months at once. Unfortunately, you'll need to go through this process for each month separately. Deadbeats. Swank is a little better. You can get a single report with multiple months included per title. So, and Overdrive is like that as well. Okay, so I'm going to set the date to September 1st to September 30th. I'll click apply, download the Excel file. And what do I see, right? I see this stuff in the table, right? So I see a bunch of columns. The first column, rank, we're not going to need that. Canopy ID would be like the proprietary ID. Okay, maybe not necessary, but maybe it could be useful at some point. The video title is going to map to the item. The supplier is going to map to the publisher. And I like that they're in the same order because that will help with the copy paste. The plays now, the plays are going to be the total item request. Now note, counter reports in IRM1 now supply unique and total metrics, unique item requests. And I believe before 5.1, it was only total. But and in any case, which one would you use? I would be very shocked if Canopy were supplying unique title requests. It's total item request is going to be a cruder metric that will count multiple uses in a single session by the same user separately. And then when I look at how high the numbers are, I'm sure it's going to be total item requests. Okay.
We got 1 minute, Jeff.
1 minute. Okay, so this is a copy paste project, right? Oh, you also want to delete the titles with no plays. This becomes a copy paste project. And we then have a faux counter IRM1 report that we can upload to Alma. Can it be sped up? I mean, so you can see this. This is not difficult to do. It's a little tedious, right? Because every month you're faced with this task, which is a boring task. And maybe there are multiple platforms. So I thought, can we speed it up? Well, we here have acquired, there's the upload. We've acquired Library Open Workflows here, which is a whole lot of fun to work with. And often you use it for Alma APIs, but I thought, well, it's really good at data manipulation. And I just wanted to share what it looks like when hold on, I got a little video demo open. Well, and it is only about 20 seconds, I think. So I select a file, I set the date, I submit it, and it pops out a JSON file as you would get from a sushi harvest, and you can see it's all formatted like the JSON. So if library open workflows can do it, you could probably have a conversation with a chatbot and have it pop out um, a Python script to accomplish something similar. So that's my talk, and on to the next. I can stop my sharing. There we go.
All right. Should I just dive in? I guess I should. Okay, so I'm going to demo a cloud app that I developed and released about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. It was for a CRV update or a request that was highly voted in our consortium for the ability to delete patron or user account notes in a batch by set. So I'm in a sandbox environment, one of our consortium sandboxes. I'm new working on a set of users. So I have this set that I've itemized. And so I have these user accounts. And I'll go into one of them. So I added both of these through the update notify user job. One of them I already modified. The other one, this one, I have not. And so I'll talk briefly about what we're going to be doing in this. So when you add a note like at a system level in a batch, you get this note type of other, user viewable is not checked, pop-up notes not checked, and this is the text. So what we're going to be modifying is the attributes here. So type, user viewable, pop-up note, or deleting. So I have this one that says research assistant proxy borrowing okay for SP26, and then the second note says technology borrower FA25. And all of them are consistent across this set of 25 users. So go back to the homepage. So to access the cloud app, it's a user note utility in here. I'm not going to go into how to make it accessible. You want to pin the app first. It comes up with a message to navigate to admin manage sets. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. And so you'll want to go to admin manage sets. It'll populate with a list of what are called entities, but essentially the names of the sets. If you search for the set you want, it'll lift to the top. But I'm going to pull this one up. So I'm going to select it. It loads the user data, so you want to confirm that the set ID is correct, the name is correct, and it'll say how many user accounts with notes are in there. You have two kind of like meta options here. One is to delete all notes. So it'll delete every note in the set, every note in the user account, and return essentially like an empty array back with the user object. We're going to select modify or delete specific notes. Now, one thing to note about this note is that there's something on the notes called segment type, which is whether a note is added as an internal or external note. This cloud app only touches internal notes. So external notes with an external segment type are left alone. They're not touched with this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the notes for the proxy borrowers. So you have the set information at the top. You have job configuration right here, which is a window. And then as you select options down at the bottom, you add them to the job configuration window. So I'm going to click modify notes. That's the action that I want to do. I have filter criteria, which are text search, date range, creator filter, so the note creator. I'm going to do text search. For this, there are different options. You can make it case sensitive or not. I'm just going to do proxy because that was unique for that one type of note. Substring is so there's three matching options: are substring, whole word, or exact. There's more documentation on this, and I'll point you towards it towards the end. But substring is like if you put in, say, tech here, it's going to match on tech, it's going to match on technology, it's going to match on technical services, anything that contains the string tech within it, right? Whole word is going to respect word boundaries, so essentially the spaces around words. Or if you did like proxy borrower, you would need both of these words subsequent to each other. So we're just going to do proxy. And then you have your modification options, pop-up settings, note type, or user viewable. So I'm going to make this a pop-up note, and I'm going to change the note type to library. And then you scroll to the top, you have your parameters, you hit execute. It processes and counts down, and then it will show you the results. So it'll say how many notes were modified, right? And you have an option to export as a CSV. First, we'll go back and we'll look at those notes. Let me see. So you can see that this note now is library. It's a pop-up note. So if you use the manage patron services interface, it would pop up with that information. So we'll go back. I'll show you a delete. So I'm going to go back in, same modifier, delete specific notes, delete. I'm going to do text search, word, technology. We'll delete those. One note deleted on each one. So we can go take a look, make sure the other notes weren't touched. So this one's still there. And then if I wanted to, let me go back, manage sets. So there's still 25 users and notes. I'll just delete all. For this one, it has a confirm delete all. It's just saying all internal segment note types are going to be deleted. So I'm going to hit yes. Counts down. And then that is it. All the notes are deleted. You could export the job as a CSV. It shows the text before and after or any changes. You can hide that result, and then I will pull this up. Okay, so these have no notes any longer. So I'm going to show you where to find the documentation for this in case you want to load it up, use it. It requires a user manager role or user admin role. And so to get the documentation, you can click the little ellipses, you can click the info button. This brings you to the developers network page for the cloud app. And then if you scroll down, you can click on view this on GitHub, and you can see the code. You can pull it locally, you can modify it, whatever you need to. The other thing that I want to mention is that and I need to update the documentation for this. The thing it will fail on is if you have something in the user record that is no longer configured. So like say you add like a statistical user category, you have it in the code tables, and then you delete that statistical user category, but it remains in the item record. That will fail when it tries to send that user object back. And that's not just a cloud app thing, it's just like a user API issue. So that is it. Let me stop sharing.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Min Young Chang, and I'm a cataloging and a cataloger for monographs and special project at USC. Today, I'll be sharing how we used OCLC API and Alma to make our reading project more data-driven. And this started as a small experiment, but grew into something much more practical, I think. And I hope it gives you some ideas you can adapt for your own workflow. So here's agenda. Here's a quick overview what I'm gonna talking about today, and I'll start with some background, like how this idea came about and what tools we started with, and then I'll talk about some trial and errors, including a few things that didn't work at first, and after that I'll share some key improvements we made, and finally I'll end with some ideas for future directions. So this project actually began when our architecture and fine arts librarian reached out and asked if there was a way to add OCLC holding counts to her reading review list in Alma Analytics or exported Excel spreadsheet. So we started with a tool called Excel Alma Lookup Tool. It's developed by Thomas Ventimiglia at Princeton University, and this tool uses OCLC Z3950. So we use this tool to retrieve a list of institutions that hold specific titles that we are reviewing. And as you can see in the screenshot here, we use this tool to get a list of institution, the code, the head holdings for each title, and then we literally counted the special characters between institutions code to count how many libraries hold this title. But there were some limitation. For example, like when the holding count was too high, like around 1700, it wasn't retrieving all the institutions and we couldn't get the correct number. So that limitation kind of led us to experiment the OCLC API to see if we could make the process faster and more reliable. And it was my very first time using OCLC OrCAD API, so there was definitely a learning curve, but thankfully the OCLC API community provide excellent documentations, recordings, and FAQ pages, so it's so much easier to get it started. And if any one of you interested in using OCLC API, I highly recommend exploring this community site first. So to test the API, I used Postman, which is a tool that let us send and test API requests just to make sure if the API is working correctly. And the integration, like setting up the OCLC API in Postman, it's also well documented in the OCLC community website. And my Python script worked fine to retrieve the data using the API, although I heavily relied on AI to help write and debug my code because I'm also beginner at writing the Python code. But one major issue I faced early on was the WordKit Search API version 2. The token expires every 20 minutes. That means my Python script could successfully retrieve holding counts, but only for a short time. So after 20 minutes, it would stop running. And for a smaller test, that was fine, but for a large scale project, it's kind of not practical. So while researching solutions, asking a lot of questions to AI but thankfully I came across a Python script by Ron Chesko at Western Washington University, and his script included a great feature. It automatically refreshes the token before it expired. So I adapted his approach into my workflow, which made a huge difference. And at first, I had some trouble running his script on my laptop, but he suggested trying Google Colab, which is free and open and provides more memory for running the code, and that worked perfectly. So with the token renewal automated, I was able to run the script continuously without worrying about manual interruptions. And we collected those OCLC holding counts and we prepared the data in an Excel spreadsheet as shown here. Very simple. And for the next step, to import the data into Alma, we created a local field 916 for this specific holding count data. So we added the holding count, the number itself, the subfield A, and the data we import into the subfield C. So in Alma, our input profile used the MMS ID as the match method, and the merge method was set to very simple, just add 916 fields into existing records. And this made the holding count data visible directly in Alma and also accessible through Alma Analytics. So after testing it with our art and architecture collections, and also we expanded to the Holocaust collection as well. And after smaller tests like this, we wanted to see if this workflow could be used for a major reading project at the Grand Library, which has about 1 million titles. It's more like a depository for our library. So, and at the time we were planning to review the whole collection at the Grand Library. So we are thinking to use OCLC holding counts as one of the several data points alongside overlaps with print and electronic holdings and duplicate copies and usage statistics. Here are the steps I followed. I created a report in Alma Analytics for records with OCLC number, because we have some records that doesn't have OCLC number. And then we also excluded titles like SCALC, special and archival collections. And then I ran an overlap analysis in analytics to identify and remove duplicate copies, because these overlapping titles are easy to flag for deselection. So I removed them because what I wanted to include in the report is the titles that still needed review for potential deselection. And then I run the Python script to gather the holding counts and then import the data into Alma using the import profile, and ran an analytic report, including the 916 field as a local parameter, then share the report with the head of collection development. So this gave us a great opportunity to see what tech services can contribute to more data-driven picture for collection development, and hoping to see whether these titles are widely held by peer institutions or rare and unique to USC collection. And here's what data looks like in Alma and then analytics. In Alma Analytics, the 916 field appear as a local parameter 12 here, and which allows to sort and filter and compare the titles based on these numbers. And then to share a couple of things to keep in mind. First, this method is not perfect, but it's shown us what tech services can contribute to weeding and collection development. And recently, the Excel Alma lookup tool beta version was released, so it's not officially launched yet, but the beta version now includes holding count option in its result types. This makes it much easier for those who are not comfortable using Python or APIs. Also be aware of OCLC API limits by 50,000 requests per day and with a monthly cap. So be aware of that. And also some holding counts may already appear in Alma. If your catalogers use search external in the metadata editor, for example, at USC, it automatically adds that information to field 948. But in our case, catalogers use several different ways of import. So things like search external, gateway export, or batch import via import profile. So not every record in Alma includes this 948. And looking ahead, we'd love to automate regular updates and possibly combine data from other consortium resources such as SCALC, SRU, or BTAA, Big Ten Academic Alliance. BTAA has its own collection assessment tool partnered with Gold Rush from Colorado Alliance of Research Libraries, but it doesn't support API or Z3950 or SRU when I asked about it in summer this year. So at this point, I cannot really see how I can approach this idea, but I'm still exploring how that might work. So if anyone has experience or ideas, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear your comments and suggestions. And here are a few links if you'd like to explore these tools. I highly recommend all of these useful tools and scripts. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, everyone. Now questions. We can all see each other now. You can raise your hand and ask a question. You can enter it into the chat. We're here for a little bit, and I do have a post-conference survey that I will be sharing out as well. A lot of information to process. Feel free to use the Q&A chat or unmute.
I could ask a question of Jay. So I've used like not a ton of cloud apps, but I've used some, and I haven't seen any that were as sort of nicely laid out as yours. Did you have ones that you were modeling yours on, or did you do a bunch of